How does a wall divide a city for 28 years and then suddenly stop working in one night? That was Berlin in 1989. For decades, the Berlin Wall split one city into two worlds. On one side was West Berlin. On the other was East Berlin. Families were separated. Streets were cut in half. Some people lived just a few minutes away from each other but could not simply walk across. And to many people, the wall looked permanent. It had concrete barriers, fences, watchtowers, guards, floodlights, checkpoints, and a guarded empty strip around it. It was not just a wall, it was a system built to control movement. But then, on one confusing night, the wall lost its power. To understand why, we have to go back to the end of World War II. After the war, Germany was divided into occupation zones. The United States, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union each controlled different parts of the country. Berlin was divided too, even though the city sat deep inside the Soviet-controlled zone. That made West Berlin strange. It was a Western-controlled city surrounded by communist East Germany. Soon, Berlin became one of the clearest symbols of the Cold War. West Berlin represented the West. East Berlin belonged to the communist East, and between them, the difference became impossible to hide. Before the wall existed, many East Germans simply left. They went through Berlin and escaped to the West. Workers left, students left, young people left. Doctors, engineers, and skilled professionals left too. For East Germany, this was a serious problem. The country was losing people it needed. So in 1961, the border was suddenly closed. At first, it was barbed wire, then it became concrete. Then it became stronger, wider, and harder to cross. The Berlin Wall did not just divide a city, it cut through neighborhoods, streets, train lines, and families. Some roads ended directly at concrete. Some windows near the border were bricked up. Crossing points existed, but they were tightly controlled. And this reveals what the wall really was. It was built less to keep enemies out and more to keep East Germans in. For years, some people still tried to escape. Some dug tunnels, some hid in cars, some risked everything to cross. A few succeeded, many did not. So by the 1980s, the wall had become more than concrete. It had become a symbol of control. But then, across the communist world, pressure started to build. In the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev was trying reforms. His message was clear. The old system could not continue forever. Across Eastern Europe, people began demanding change. In Poland, protests had already shown that communist governments could be challenged. Then Hungary opened its border with Austria. Suddenly, East Germans had another way out. They could travel through Hungary and escape west. More and more people left. Others crowded into West German embassies in nearby countries, hoping to be allowed out. The East German government could feel control slipping away. Inside East Germany, protests were growing too. In Leipzig, Monday demonstrations got bigger week after week. People were no longer just whispering. They were standing in public and demanding change. The old East German leader, Erich Honecker, was pushed out. But changing the leader did not solve the problem. People wanted something simple, freedom to move. So the government tried to calm things down with new travel rules. The idea was not to destroy the wall. The idea was to loosen travel in a controlled way. But then came a press conference. On November 9, 1989, Günter Schabowski, an East German official, sat in front of reporters and read from his notes. He was announcing new travel rules, but the details were confusing. Then, a reporter asked the question that changed history. When do the new rules begin? Schabowski looked down at his papers. He seemed unsure. Then he answered that the rules applied immediately. Without delay, that message went out on television, and East Berliners heard it. So they did the most natural thing possible. They went to the border. At checkpoints like Bornholmer Strasse, crowds began to gather. At first, there were only some people. Then more came, then even more. The guards were confused. They had heard the announcement too, but they had not received clear instructions. They called their superiors. They waited for orders, but no one gave a clear answer. Meanwhile, the crowd kept growing. People believed the border was open. They expected to be let through. The guards could feel the situation slipping out of their control. And shortly before midnight, the barrier was finally lifted. People crossed into West Berlin. Some walked slowly, almost not believing it. Others cried. Some laughed. Some hugged strangers. Families and friends who had been separated for years could finally meet again. And almost instantly, the wall stopped meaning what it had meant for 28 years. The concrete was still there. The towers were still there. The checkpoints were still there. But the fear was breaking. By the next day, people were climbing onto the wall, standing on it, celebrating, and chipping pieces away with hammers. This was not a battle, it was something stranger. A system had depended on the wall, and suddenly the wall no longer worked. That is why the fall of the Berlin Wall became one of the biggest symbols of the Cold War ending. Less than a year later, Germany would be reunited. But on that night, people did not know all of that yet. What they knew was simpler. A wall that had divided their lives was finally opening. For 28 years, it had looked permanent. But history is full of things that look permanent right before they fall apart. In the end, one wall divided a city. One confused announcement helped break its power. And one night changed Europe.